Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2, and today we are breaking down the Year 6 Season 2 finale. That's right, the conclusion for Shades of Red dropped yesterday, and we have a bunch to go over. I want to talk about the final mission, the story implications of this finale and the overall season, and my thoughts on it all. Now, before you ask, the focus of this video will not be on Master difficulty. I have a separate guide that I'm working on for that. It should be out later today, so stay tuned. And if you want to be sure not to miss that when it drops, as well as all of my other coverage on the Division 2, then I hope you will consider clicking that subscribe button if you're not already. There's plenty more content on the way. So, we got a bunch to break down. Let's get right to it. I did want to mention here as we dive in that spoilers are going to follow for the remainder of the video, that being for the Division 2's current and ongoing story, all of this season, Shades of Red, and one small tie-in to the Division Hunted novel. So, in case you are sensitive to spoilers on any of that, be warned. Alright, to begin, let's briefly talk about Scouts. That being because, of course, you had to play through these to unlock the finale. So yesterday we got Scout 16, which upon completion then unlocked the finale and everything else. Honestly, there's not much to mention here about the Scouts. As I've said in videos before, I think the actual structure to Scouts has good potential for variety and creativity, right? Pretty much the fact that it's just an open-ended outlet for them to put in whatever kinds of objectives they want in there. That being said, the actual objectives that we have gotten this season have not been new or original. And so yeah, I like that we're getting this stuff to do weekly instead of every month, but that's about it. There's nothing else noteworthy about them. Alright, but let's get to the actual meat of this video, the finale, and I first want to talk about the mission itself. So, this took place at Space Administration HQ, which hasn't always been one of my favorite missions, but I think it actually did lend pretty well to this finale just in terms of how much they were able to tweak the actual mission. I just think physically it had a pretty good design to put in the mechanics and the riddles and all of that. Speaking of secrets, I did want to shout out that I put out a video earlier on a guide to a secret boss that is actually within this finale mission. It's pretty cool. You get a mask from it, so in case you want to check that out, I will link it in the upper corner and down in the description. But let's talk about what I liked about the mission. Firstly, the visual design, or redesign we'll say, was quite cool. In that first interior space that you get to within the mission, you see that server tower that you approach. That thing was really cool. And then it had all the cords stringing off from it like different tendrils almost. To me at least, I was getting big sci-fi imagery from that. It was actually very reminiscent of like Siva from Destiny. So really good job there in my opinion, making the space feel almost brand new, that addition. Another thing I liked from this mission was the fact that hyenas were the faction, because this is the first time in a long time that it has not been a Black Tusk mission. I know narratively it makes sense that we keep fighting the Black Tusk for these events, but man, it was refreshing to have a different faction here. But not just that, the fact that there was actually an all-new enemy unit included here. Up at the rooftop section specifically, you may have noticed that there were some hyenas coming out with rocket launchers strapped to them. This is through and through a brand new enemy unit. They have their own unique look, they have their own attack pattern, right, their own weak points. Even that boss Dingo that I think you fight up there is one of these new units. So that was a pretty cool surprise. We haven't had something like that in a long time, so very cool choice there. Additionally, the overall mechanics of the mission, while not overly revolutionary, I did still enjoy them. Part of this is because how they factored into Master difficulty there, so that's partial credit for the main mission itself. But yeah, stuff like draining the water out of that room was pretty fun. That changed the dynamic of the flow of the mission. And then lastly, I really liked that we had an exotic as a lure for this mission with the Provocator. I just think having a good reward like that tied to a finale mission is a cool idea, so I hope that's something that we see them carry on in the future. Alright, but let's move on and talk about the story. Or lack of story, shall we? That's kind of the kicker here. Not much happened. There was not a lot of context given for why Theo was here at Space Admin, or even why we're rescuing him. When we do eventually meet him up in that server room, which by the way, it was cool that we actually got to see him just like Keener in the bunker in Year 6 Season 1. But we do that, we clear the rooftop, and then he just flies away. There's not much going on after that. If anything, this mission felt more like a hyena lore mission. You know, the fact that we see Bichon here trying to claim and rebuild the hyena council. You see Sparrow say that he needs to bring in Theo for that to happen as kind of a bargaining chip. So honestly, story-wise, that was probably my favorite stuff from this mission. It was cool to get some additional hyena lore, but as far as the main storyline, it kind of played out how I speculated it may back on Monday, where the events of this were all somewhat inconsequential because it's all kind of holdover until the Brooklyn DLC arrives. And I think we're just at a point where they have now had to scrap, remix, and alter the story so many times, right? If you think about it, this traces all the way back to when we were going to get a Year 5 Season 4 that was going to launch alongside alongside the Brooklyn DLC. That was then canceled when they decided to go for Project Resolve. So that first delayed the DLC by an entire year, and that's when they thought about doing year 6. Then they had their whole plan there. Then Heartland got canceled. That threw a wrench in things. Then seasonal characters were canceled. That also threw a wrench in things since we knew that they were going to be tied to the narrative themselves. And now, as of last month, we got the second delay of the Brooklyn DLC, which again, I'm sure, and I know for a fact, has changed some of their plans. So it sucks, yes, but what are you going to do? It kind of is what it is. I know I was getting a lot of questions on my stream yesterday from people saying why was there no cutscene after the end of this finale mission. It is my understanding that they had one ready to go for this, but in fact it was all just pretty much set up for Brooklyn because that was going to be next season, so they pretty much just had to be pulled. And in the wake of that, the only post-mission really detail that we get, in case you missed it, is that if you go to Manny's door at the White House, it has a little post-it on there which says, "Do not disturb, Glass's interrogation in progress." So that's kind of funny and cheeky, sure, but yeah, it does suck how little story progression really happened throughout the course of this finale and the overall season. However, as we all know, the actual mission and content of The Division is only half of the lore, and the rest of that, say it with me, comes from the comms. Now, most of this season's comms were actually more Brooklyn setup, and not too revelatory to the overall main plot. However, some of the ones that we get from the finale specifically are a bit more intriguing, and I want to talk about some of those. Just as a note, in case you finished the finale and you don't have all of the comms, all you need to do to get the rest is replay the mission. As soon as I went back through there, I very quickly got all of them. I believe they come from boss drops just like past seasons. But yeah, there are 3 comms specifically that I want to play here, and let us begin with this one titled Wipe.
It's done.
You sure?
All traces of Ajax's trip back home and have been wiped from the network.
You kept a copy, just in case, right?
I'm not an amateur. Of course I kept a copy. You never know what intel can come in handy down the road.
I'm sorry about your dad.
Don't worry about it. He had a bad heart. Shit happened.
I know you wanted it to be more than that. Political intrigue, someone killing his chance at running for president by killing him.
Yeah, it makes for a better movie, but it's not real life. It's actually kind of nice that he just died. Nothing nefarious, just his time.
I'm glad he never saw the country you love so much come to this.
Me too. Besides, if someone had killed them, I'd probably have a target on my back too for looking too closely at the Cabal, or their ties to Ellis.
You know, you might be onto something.
Oh no. I just accepted my dad died of natural causes. Please tell me I didn't accidentally make myself a target for those psychopaths.
I'm pretty sure that watch on your wrist and your association with me put you in their crosshairs. But we can use this. We can use your dad's death to lure them out of hiding.
Okay, so some very interesting notes here. This starts out by mentioning Ajax or Division Agent Melanie Hoskins' trip to Silver Creek. We covered all of that in last season's lore. That was a big thread throughout that season. She returned with the Hunter roster and a lot of intel, and through that intel, Keener and Theo talk about here how it seems to confirm that Theo's dad actually just died of natural causes. Now, this did lead me to be slightly confused. I might need NGN or story mode here to give me some clarity. I thought it was already previously confirmed that Natalia Sokolova killed Theo's dad, right? Much that it was orchestrated, much like President Mendez. But maybe it had just been Theo's leading theory that Natalia was involved. Either way, interesting stuff there. Also very interesting is that the Cabal get referenced again. This was a concept and new group of people that was introduced at the end of last season, and they seem to be kind of being set up as the Division Universe's true big bads, because basically Natalia Sokolova, who has been the main antagonist that we're fighting, she is just one member of this nefarious Cabal, and so Keener mentions that the passing of Theo's dad could potentially help lure them out. I don't entirely know what that means, but I'm very curious to see where it goes. Alright, take a listen to the next comm roster.
This is incredible. We have all of them. You were right. Bridget Douglas is a hunter.
I knew it. That's our way in.
You sure? She's a hunter.
She's a friend. Kept me out of trouble more than once. If anyone flew under Cal's radar, it's Bridge.
Okay, well, if you vouch for her, I'll trust your judgment about the heiress hunter. You know she's set to inherit $1 billion company?
I do. How do you think we became friends?
Fair enough. I guess it's better than cold calling Brian Johnson or Thaddeus Green and asking them if they want to help us kill the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Alright, so to start out, we see that they are accessing and using the Hunter roster that, again, Melanie Hoskins was able to secure on her trip to Silver Creek. A very interesting discussion begins about Bridget Douglas, or Viper's, role as a hunter. Now, that is information that we knew, but seemingly, at one point in time, Keener did not know. I'm just kind of surprised that given how close of friends it seems to be set up that they were, that she didn't tell him that herself. But it seems like despite that, he still trusts her, and I wonder if this revelation is what kind of began their plot to set up a resistance in Brooklyn. The one other pretty cool note from here is that they talk about some other hunters that are on the roster. They talk about Brian Johnson, who of course was the recruiter that we defeated, but they also mention Thaddeus Green. Now that name might not ring a bell to some of you. However, and again spoilers, I shouted this out at the beginning, this is the Division agent that we see revealed to be a hunter and taken down within the Division Hunted novel. That released pretty much days after the finale of Year 5 Season 2 for the game, where we found out about the recruiter. So we kind of got that reveal both in game and novel form that many hunters are Division agents themselves. And so yeah, to see him mentioned, I just thought was a pretty cool tie-in and reference. Alright, final comm, take a listen to Masked.
Holy shit. Built-in comms, bulletproof, lightweight, internal cooling system, anti-fogging technology with filtration system, able to detect and diagnose infection and hydration levels and arousal levels by pupil dilation to determine if the operative is being dishonest? Built-in voice modulation software to obscure identity? Oh, work in progress. Scheduled for integration in May 2022. Well, you are almost a perfect tool. Guess we're lucky we only had to face the 5th generation of the Hunter mask and not the 7th. This tech is good, but it could have been great, with a couple more years and a few modifications.
Okay, now there are some pretty wild Hunter lore implications here. Obviously, we see Theo looking through the schematics and capabilities of their mask tech. Now, an important note is that seemingly the Hunters that we fight in this current timeline of the Division 2 do not have access to all of this stuff, because as he said, this was said to be the capabilities of the 7th generation Hunter mask, but apparently the Hunters of today are only on the 5th generation. And then one curious note, I don't know if this is meant to be an Easter egg or not, but the date he mentions for when the 7th gen of Hunter mask was meant to go live in May of 2022, that was the exact month and year when Season 9 released and the game basically returned to life after having the content drought and when they had to rebuild the development team. So I don't know if that is either meant to be some funny coincidence, or there's actually some kind of like symbolism here, or again, maybe it is just an Easter egg. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. Overall, from this comm, it was just cool to see some of the Hunters', supernatural abilities basically contextualized and somewhat explained in the lore. Alright, well there you have it folks, that is my breakdown of the Year 6 Season 2 finale for Shades of Red in the Division 2. Some good, some bad. I thought the actual finale mission itself was fun with some innovative designs and visuals. There was definitely some pretty cool scattered lore, but I would say the one main drag of this season was the main story itself. Hopefully that is remedied by the time we do get to Brooklyn, but all in all, I still enjoyed myself. I will say the inclusion of Master Difficulty is itself a big plus. I really enjoyed that aspect to this, but again, we'll discuss that in my next video. I now turn it all over to you guys. What were your thoughts on the finale here for Shades of Red? Whether it be the scout system, the actual gameplay of the finale mission, the main story that went down, some of the lore comms. What are your top thoughts, feelings, and reactions about this finale? Anything you got, as always, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts down below, but that is going to do it for me today, folks. Again, stay tuned for my Master Difficulty guide, which should be coming very soon, and I will see you all then. Thank you all so much for watching. RogueGold. Out.